The second day of the UN's Big Data Forum 2023. This afternoon's session is entitled The Fifth Industrial Revolution, Robotics, AI Partnerships, A Safer Society, Leveraging Artificial Intelligence for Citizen Safety and Security. Can I ask that the barcode be put up on the screen, please? Can you just put the barcode up? So just to let everyone know who has come in late, the brochure is an electronic brochure. We try to be paperless for this event in keeping of the spirit of the event. So please, you can capture the brochure and you will be able to have all the information. This afternoon's session the feature address will be delivered by Professor Renee Cummings. Professor Cummings is a data and tech ethicist and the first data activist in residence at the University of Virginia's School of Data Science, where she was named Professor of Practice in Data Science. Professor Cummings is also a distinguished member of the World Economic Forum's Data Equity Council and the World Economic Forum's AI Governance Alliance. And she's also an advisory member of the AI and Equality Initiative at Carnegie Council for Ethics in International Affairs. Professor Cummings is a member of the Global Academic Network and the Center for AI and Digital Policy in Washington, D.C. She is also a criminologist, a criminal psychologist, a therapeutic jurisprudence specialist, and a community scholar at Columbia University. And she asked me to include that she's a proud Trinbagonian. Yeah. Today's session will be moderated by Nirad Tiwari. I think most of us in Trinidad and Tobago don't need an introduction to Nirad, but I'm required to do so. Nirad Tiwari is the Chief Executive Officer of the American Chamber of Commerce of Trinidad and Tobago. He has a history of working in international trade and development. Prior to his tenure at AmCham, Mr. Tiwari was the CEO of the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Service Industries. I think Vashti Gayadeen is here as well from the coalition. He was a lecturer in politics and communications at the University of the West Indies and head of news and current affairs at IETV. He was also a communications and public affairs officer at the Commonwealth Secretariat. Mr. Tiwari's proven skills include business planning and development, institutional strengthening and team building, and entrepreneurship. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Mass Communication and Media Studies from Florida International University and a Master's in International Relations from the University of the West Indies. Professor Cummings will be giving a keynote address, but following that keynote address, there will be a panel discussion that will include Commander Gavin Hira. Commander Hira is a retired military officer with an excess of 30 years military and law enforcement experience. He's a former head of the National Operations Center, and he's also an organizational transformation and strategic leadership expert. He lectures and serves as a senior member of the Board of Governors with the Anglia Ruskin University School of Accounting and Management in Trinidad and Tobago in the MBA program. And he's also an expert in safe city and homeland security. Commander Hira has led and coordinated multiple public security and public safety initiatives locally, regional, and internationally. Welcome, Commander Hira. Finally, and last but no means least, we have Vitra Gopi. Vitra is a senior executive lead with 25 years experience in the IT services industry. She is the Chief Operations Officer at Digital Era Group, a US-based next-generation cybersecurity services provider. In addition to a role as CEO at Digital Era, Vitra was appointed General Manager of the Services Business Unit at Digital Era, tasked with the delivery and deployment of next-generation cybersecurity solutions. I will ask the moderator and panelists to come to the stage, with the moderator sitting in the first chair, Professor Cummings in the second, and Ms. Gopi, and then Commander Hira. Please, ladies, and please join me in welcoming them. Professor Cummings.
Hi, Professor. How are you?
Nice
Good
to see you.
Okay. So I'll now invite Professor Cummings to take to the podium to give her keynote address. Professor Cummings.
Sure. Where's the clicker? They said it would be up here. Well, thank you so very much. Let me say it is an absolute pleasure and an honor to be home and to have this conversation with you. I will say that this is definitely the most well-behaved data crowd that I've ever been in. Usually the data scientists are a pretty feisty bunch. So I'm going to have a conversation with you about data science, about critical data science, and about how data science supports citizen safety and citizen security. Let me ensure this is working well. So in the age of artificial intelligence, citizen safety and citizen security begin with data justice and require robust data activism to ensure communities thrive and to ensure communities co-design their futures. So let's see what's happening here. Okay, got you. Back. All right, let me just get the rhythm and flow of this. And hold on, it's like moving at a rate. Okay. So you're getting a taste of the presentation, but this thing is just moving at a rate. I don't know if one of our tech people could come just quickly for a minute. So as we begin the conversation, I will just say this to you. We are going to have this conversation about AI, about citizen safety, and about security. I'm going to touch some concepts that I really want you to think about: data justice, algorithmic justice. Okay, could you just take it back to the beginning for me? Fantastic. So artificial intelligence, we are standing at this moment at the intersection of technology and society, which offers an extraordinary amount of promise. This technology called AI has the extraordinary ability to transform just about every industry, every sector, every business model. The things that we are seeing artificial intelligence doing are things that we had never, ever imagined. But the challenge with artificial intelligence, and if you are new to artificial intelligence, AI is simply computers doing very human-like things. And if you have ever used Netflix, if you have ever done any kind of internet shopping, if you are on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, or just about any social media platform, you are using artificial intelligence. But what AI has got to offer us is extraordinary prosperity. And I think maybe yesterday and earlier today, you were hearing about those things that AI can do to advance humanity, to really enhance the economy, to change the ways in which we have been doing business, to really enhance those business models. There's something else that I want you to think about. It's called an algorithm. And an algorithm is what gives artificial intelligence its lifeblood. AI gets its energy from an algorithm. And an algorithm is built with data. Artificial intelligence, and just want you to think about this because it's the Big Data Forum, there is no AI without data. And it's something that we're going to discuss as we move into the presentation. So what is the importance of data science and critical data science and data? Decision making. That's what we want with data science. We want to make the best decisions using the data that we have. Data science and big data is about precision decision making. It's about business intelligence, and it is about intelligent public measurement for creating public policy. Power. The other thing about AI and why the world is talking about artificial intelligence is because it has extraordinary power. Not only the power to change and reinvent and reimagine and recreate, but the power to snatch away certain things from us, like agency and autonomy and the ability to self-determine and many of the things that we hold true to us and dear to us when we think about questions of democracy. The power struggle at the moment is between the computing power of artificial intelligence versus geopolitical power. Every big nation at this moment is deploying a national artificial intelligence strategy. The G8 countries have all been discussing AI. There's something that I want you to think about when we're reimagining this is the Hiroshima Accord. And a few weeks ago, the president of Japan, and of course working with the G7 nations, decided that we needed an approach to artificial intelligence that was not only responsible and trustworthy and mature, that we really have to find new ways to govern. So some of the things that I want you to think about after this conference would be the EU AI Act, would also be the executive order that was deployed maybe about 3 weeks ago by the US President Biden that also spoke about this need for trust and trustworthy AI and responsible AI and ways in which we need to think about data. The other thing that I want you to think about is that all of our data, all of the world's data, is owned by 5 companies. 5 companies own all of the data in this world. Everything that we have been thinking about, everything we've been clicking, every emoji that we have shared, everything that we have looked at on the internet that maybe we didn't even want people to know we were looking at on the internet, all of that is owned by these companies. And as AI decides to reimagine these business models and create these extraordinary possibilities that we've been hearing about with big data, some of the things I'm going to touch for you are going to be possibilities in policing, in crime fighting, and of course, in the judicial system. So this is a list, and it's certainly not an extensive list, but these are the areas that I also work in when it comes to AI and AI policing. So DNA, and we've seen extraordinary progress when it comes to AI and DNA, definitely when it comes to exoneration and proving people's innocence. Predictive policing, which is not new. So in policing, we've been using algorithms for about 2 decades now. Crime forecasting, crime mapping, robots and drones, surveillance technology like facial recognition. Of course, we're using AI in ways in which we can bring greater accountability to policing and reducing police use of force. In crime fighting, extraordinary development when it comes to crime scene reconstruction, when it comes to fraud detection, when it comes to dismantling major criminal networks, when it comes to corruption, human trafficking, crimes against children, finding missing children, online security, and of course, cybersecurity. So these are some of the ways big data and AI are being used to enhance citizen safety, citizen security. In the court system, case management, long been used, algorithms have long been used in that. Of course, algorithmic decision making, and some of these may be new concepts, but we are going to break them down in a few minutes. Judicial decision making, deploying risk assessment tools and risk-based algorithms to look at recidivism, of course, sentencing, pretrial detention, bail, parole, public safety, security. So these are very traditional things that we have been doing with AI in criminal justice. Many of them have been enhanced, many of them have been improved, but there are some other things that I just want you to think about. So as we deploy algorithms and AI in criminal justice and policing and citizen safety and security, we have got to be very cognizant that we are not using this technology to track, to trace, to terrorize, and to traumatize, but we are really bringing a mature approach to technology that ensures that we are building public trust and public confidence and legitimacy in what we are doing, and we are, of course, testing. Doing a lot of testing on these AI systems and the models that we're deploying, ensuring that the individuals who are using these technologies, in particular police and law enforcement, are trained. And one of the most powerful things that we can do with the technology is to ensure that we deploy transparency and accountability and explainability with it, because these are also very critical concepts when it comes to AI. When you have a technology like AI built with data, when you have a technology that is so powerful, one of the things you've got to always be careful about is prejudice, because where there is power, there is always room for prejudice. And it's something that we've been thinking a lot about in AI, because we've got to think always about bias and discrimination and stereotypes. So this is what we have been seeing in the world of big data. So although data has the ability to do these fantastic things, what we are realizing with data as well is data has the ability to be biased, data discriminates, data can marginalize, data can profile, and of course, data victimization. So institutional betrayal is something that I want you to think about, because one of the things that we are seeing in particular in the US, in the UK, of course in the EU, is that although we can use data to really make some of the best decisions, we can also use data to make some very bad decisions. Institutional betrayal is also a concept that you want to think about if you're working in data, if you're a data scientist, working in citizen security, working in any aspect of AI, because we have seen institutional betrayal with the deployment of algorithms, not only in policing, but in healthcare, in housing, in education, just every aspect of society. So institutional betrayal is that a lot of individuals who have to access data, whose data is being used to make decisions about them, are starting to think that the institutions that are supposed to take care of them and protect them are now using their data to betray them. So institutional betrayal is something that I want you to think about. The other thing that I want you to think about, and there's a lot to think about, is that data does not have the luxury of historic amnesia. And what that means is that when we use a data set, data carries with it every decision ever made, the good decisions and the bad decisions. One of the things that we have realized in particular in the international context is that many of the models, the AI models that are being used, are being built with historic data sets. And historic data sets carry with them often a history of trauma, of pain, of every bad decision ever made. So as data scientists and statisticians and individuals working in the data science space, we have got to become critical thinkers. So I am considered a critical data scientist, and when I teach critical data science, one of the most pressing issues is how do we interrogate data? So we have a belief oftentimes that we can take data as face value because it's computational, because it's statistical. The data is the truth, that the numbers don't lie. But what critical data science teaches us is that the numbers do lie. And many times we have got to drill into those numbers to understand the true story behind those numbers. So we have got to interrogate data. Always remember that data is never judgment-free. All data not created equal. There is always this appearance of neutrality. There is this presumption of objectivity. And there is this memory of intergenerational trauma that many of our data sets carry. So data trauma is a concept that I have introduced actually into the academic journals and into the data science space. So my research at the University of Virginia in data justice and data activism and just thinking about ways in which we could make data more equitable, more just, more inclusive, more diverse, looks at the ways in which data has been deploying trauma. What we have seen is that different communities have historically experienced data differently. And this is an image from the Tuskegee study, and this was deployed. This is probably, if you're into healthcare, you would know very well about this study. It's something that really leaves a stain on the American healthcare system. The picture is actually of black men in the South thinking that they were being treated for syphilis when they were actually being given syphilis for the healthcare system to see how syphilis was moving through the body. So always remember, as we do citizen safety and we do citizen security, different communities experience data differently. Past decisions trapped in the memory of those data sets. Also, data suffused with a cultural meaning that is oftentimes different from its computational meaning. What we are seeing with AI, in particular in the criminal justice system, is the automating of the status quo, amplifying discrimination, codifying bias, and many of these destructive practices repeating many of these past prejudices. The perils. So while we know that we can do amazing things with data, we've got to understand the challenges. This study, 2016, done on the US criminal justice system to show bias in data, bias in artificial intelligence, and bias in algorithms. You're seeing the scores. The scores are underneath the individuals. You could read the offenses. And what we realized with the criminal justice system is that we were deploying algorithms to make major decisions about risk. And the decisions that we were making were really decisions based on historic data. So the 8 and the 6 juveniles, their sentences were definitely harsher than the 2 individuals who are 2 white males and who were definitely, with a criminal dossier, unmatched by the young people. And this really speaks to the algorithms that are deployed in the criminal justice system. Just a few things that I want you to see. This gentleman, Robert Williams, was arrested with facial recognition technology. He was told by the police that he was seen in a mall in Detroit, and they saw him shoplifting. The police came to his house. They arrested him in front of his wife and his children. They took him to the police station. He spent about 15 hours incarcerated until one of the police officers decided to look at his driver's license and compare it to the image. And at that moment, they realized they had now arrested the wrong man. Facial recognition technology, something that can be deployed to do positive things, but something that could also do very dangerous things. Portia Woodruff, Detroit again. She was 8 months pregnant when the police came to her house, and they said, "We have you on video. We have images of you doing a carjacking." She said, "How could that be? I'm 8 months pregnant. I cannot leave my house." They said, "But the pictures that we have are the pictures that match you." She was arrested again. She was taken into custody. While in custody, she started to have contractions, and of course, that was a very traumatic situation for her. But of course, the police came to her home, and they said, "The computer said, it's you." So while we are using technology and we are harnessing the rewards, we have always got to think about the risks. So we're using data, we're building algorithms, we're deploying AI, but we've got to think about public trust, we've got to think about public confidence. When we're thinking about citizen safety and citizen security, you have got to ask yourself, are we using data in a way that is enhancing equity and justice? Are we doing diverse data approaches? Are we bringing inclusivity into the ways in which we are thinking about data? What about voice? What about visibility? What about representation? What about accessibility? Many of the ways in which we use data do not really treat or accommodate individuals who have accessible needs. What about neurodiversity? When we think about the many diverse intelligences that need to be captured in the ways in which we're thinking about data. Ethics. So I spend a lot of my time now just traveling internationally, speaking about big data and speaking about big data ethics. And why is it so important? Because this data that does the extraordinary things has the ability to do some very troubling things. We know data has the ability not only to control, but to discriminate, to exploit. We know that our data is being monetized. We know that our data is also being monopolized by big tech. We also know that data has the ability to oppress. And we also know, when we think about facial recognition technologies or the many ways in which we're deploying technology in the law enforcement system, our own data could be weaponized against us. So if you want to bring an ethical perspective to the work that you are doing, you have got to explore these concepts: fairness, accountability, transparency, explainability, auditability. These are very, very important. Accuracy. Are we doing work with data that discriminates? Questions around safety, security, privacy. And one of the things that we want to do with data is we want to do no harm. Now, there's never going to be the perfect algorithm. Algorithms are always going to present challenges, but we have got to understand the risks. We have got to understand rights, because we have data rights. We've got to understand our responsibilities as data scientists, and we've got to know if we do all of this, then we can truly harness the rewards. So we're thinking safety, we're thinking security, we're thinking trustworthy artificial intelligence, we're thinking algorithmic accountability. I know some of these concepts may be a little over your head, but the good thing about it is that you're hearing it, and you can Google it, and you can figure out how to include these approaches in the work that you do. Privacy, equity, civil rights. Most people don't think about data as civil rights, but cases such as facial recognition, housing discrimination, also known as digital redlining, medical algorithms that are being used in ways that Black and brown individuals are being denied healthcare equity, all making us start to think about data as a civil rights issue, new frontiers of justice to think about. When we think about citizen safety and security, we've got to think about democracy. And what we're seeing with data, what we're seeing with algorithms is that anything that has the ability to make a decision about you without you knowing has the ability to undermine democracy. So you've got to think always about due process, about fairness and equity in the context of data. We've got to think about now concepts such as deception, disinformation, deep fakes, media manipulation, social manipulation. All of these are now new and important concepts, and of course, new frontiers for thinking about data within the context of justice. Generative AI. Everyone is speaking about generative AI. Everyone is using ChatGPT. Fantastic technology, but a lot of false and compelling information that you can get from ChatGPT. Deceptions, of course, you've probably heard about hallucinations. That's when the technology gives you something that looks accurate, but is absolutely not accurate. We've got to think about hurt and harm and abuse. What we're realizing with this technology in particular is the ways in which it is now amplifying really, really hurtful practices to children. When we think about child sexual abuse now on the internet, when we think about online grooming, when we think about child sexual abuse materials and the fact that it's being used against children and weaponized against them, but our privacy laws are not there yet. Always remember the technology is ahead of the law. Content, authentication, watermarking, and of course clearly labeling these technologies are approaches that we're thinking about. Data activism, I just want you to know that for us to truly benefit from all the extraordinary advances with AI in criminal justice, we've got to think about activism. And data activism is really about trying to ensure we bring more accountability and transparency to the work that we're doing when we talk about data-driven decision-making, when we talk about predictive policing, when we talk about intelligence-led policing. Data activism. Where are our communities in this conversation? Where is civil society in the data conversation? We have got to empower individuals and communities and civil society to advocate for their own interests, using their data, understanding that our communities are not only users of data, but our communities are producers of data. And we've got to think about that. We've got to know that we can use data to advance political change and social change and economic change. And we've got to understand questions around data justice and design justice and social justice and racial justice, all very important. When we think about data justice, it's really a way to bring redress using data to underserved, high needs, and marginalized communities. And that's very important. When we think about open data, where are we when it comes to open data? Do we have access to our own data as citizens, civil society, individuals, communities? Governance, very, very important. Where are we with that? The world is changing because of AI. Responsible governance, stakeholder engagement, collective responsibility. These are all data questions. The data questions are not only the fun questions, the data questions are the hard questions. So think about it. Compliance, risk management, impact assessments. Where are your organizations? Vulnerability audits. Are you stress testing? Are you red teaming? Are you thinking about oversight and regulations and, of course, legislations? And what about enforcement? Very big questions. A crisis response is something that you have also got to think about when you're using data, in particular big data. You've got to think about the ongoing harms. You've got to think about algorithms that can go rogue. You've got to think about whether or not we have a risk management approach, whether or not we understand rights, and we understand responsibilities, and we understand what it means to do safe data science. So for us to do this, and for us to do this well, we have got to bring an approach that requires a very high level of due diligence. We have got to understand concepts around duty of care and due process and ethical resilience and ethical vigilance. And one of the things that I want you to take away just from my conversation is that we must never use data to deny a dream or defer a dream, because we're seeing too many cases where data science is being used to undermine the success of communities, where data science is being used to deny access and deny opportunities. And if we are to do data science right, we have got to understand why data activism, data justice are so critical. We've also got to understand all of us have a role when it comes to AI, when it comes to the ways in which AI will be deployed, when it comes to the governance of AI, when it comes to designing a national strategy. We've got to think about that, because we're designing hybrid futures And for us to do that well, everything we do with data and technology has got to be justice-oriented, has got to be trauma-informed, has got to be equitable, diverse, inclusive, resilient, sustainable, and human-centered. Because we're building these extraordinary legacies using this technology, and if we are truly to get citizen safety and security right, then we've got to use data and AI to reshape justice in ways that are reparative as opposed to retributive. And with that, I thank you.
Wow. Wow. I feel like my head is going to explode. So much information. Thank you very much, Professor Cummings. So much to think about. But, wow. Today is a good day. Today we're here at the UN Big Data Forum, and right across the way, Republic Bank is having its Regional Technology Summit. So for me, today is a good day because it means more and more we are thinking about the impact of digital transformation in our very lives. When we look at all of the things that Professor Cummings has spoken about and is asking us to think about, and she said it starts with data, I guess the first question I want to throw out to the panel is, well, two things. We have been advocating for a legal digital identity that would allow us, individuals, to be able to protect our online lives, right? Because you also ended on the sort of the concept of singularity and twinning of the physical and digital self. But how are we organized? We're also advocating for open data, which is not just that data is available, but that the formats are the same, that it's manipulatable, and the like. How do we, as a country, and different actors in the country represented here, contribute to the conversation and hopefully decisions that would allow us to have more open, accessible data by the government and the private sector that could lead us to be able to better use the advances in AI for human citizen development before we get to safety, because safety is a part of that. Commander Hero?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question because it's one that wakes up the room. And we have to recognize, just as you said, and just as Professor Cummings would have presented, there is a wealth, a pool of data outside there that can be used and used effectively. But apart from all of the systems and all of the integration that is there on the theater, it comes right back down to who is sitting on the table. It comes down to us. It comes down to our mindset. Are we in a position in country to adopt the mindset to be more data-driven, data-oriented, and data-using? Because as we see it, there is information out there with the data, and are we using it effectively? And it comes right back down, as I said, to us. So we have to recognize from a governmental perspective that the man on the ground, the other panel spoke about it, citizen on the ground, that the environment has changed incrementally, and we, as citizens, now have to adjust and change incrementally. So from the man on the ground to the utilization, to the pillars, to the academic aspects, data usage, moving in that new direction starts with us. And are we, as a country, ready for that adjustment? And with that adjustment will come all of the issues, maybe all of the pillars of the pestle that was described earlier, politically, economically, socially, technologically, going all the way down. But it starts with us. And my drive, based on your question this afternoon, is we as a country, we as a government, have to push that drive to ensure that we are utilizing our data and utilizing it effectively. I will close by saying, I'm wondering if we missed the ball because COVID gave us an opportunity. COVID was very data-driven. We saw how that was accelerated. We saw how systems and automation was useful. Within 24 hours, you were getting responses, you were getting results, you were seeing stuff, you were hearing stuff. But did we continue with that drive? Was there a business continuity policy or plan in utilizing data for the efficacy of us as citizens in country?
Okay. Vitra, you've been a part of the development of a lot of those recommendations, at least through AmCham. What are your thoughts?
Well, I just want to comment on what Commander Hirai was saying. And I think the pandemic posed a really great opportunity for us in terms of leap forwarding, in terms of being data-driven. But I think when the pandemic ended, people stepped back and they began to think, how is that data being used? There's so much power in data. Professor Cummings alluded to it as well. There's power, but there's a lot of responsibility and regulation that has to come with it. And I think in addition to the mindset, a lot of people are in their minds asking, and it came up in a lot of the panel discussions yesterday, how is that data going to be used? Where's the responsibility behind the data? Is it going to be secure? Am I going to be safe? Are they going to police me? Are they going to regulate me? So I think from my perspective, a big part of being data-driven and coming into a mindset of allowing people to understand the positive impacts about data is that we have to assure them of data security, data privacy, and data regulation. If those tenets are not there, people are not going to be safe and secure and comfortable about putting data out there, and there's always going to be that fear about usability. Some of the tenets, and Darren alluded a bit to it this morning, was like privacy by design in how data is being modeled, and we need to follow some of those tenets. So I think a big part of it has to do with education as well, letting the public understand the use to which data is being put, and there is a responsibility about collecting data only for the need in which it is going to be facilitating, number one, and that there must be a legal basis for which data is going to be collected. And we need to make sure that we communicate that to the public so that they feel very sure, very safe about supporting a mindset before they support a national-driven perspective or strategy around being data-driven as an economy.
Yeah, adopting that mindset.
Professor Cummings, I follow you on social media, as you know, and I see your frustration sometimes in how the strategies or lack thereof behind policing in Trinidad and Tobago, and particularly in such a small space. And I saw a comment this morning from a senior person in the security services talking about when there's a murder, chances are that there are murders. They've realized that there might be more murders in the context of reprisals. To me, that is an old realization. And the data had been used in the past in Trinidad and Tobago. So given where we are, given your knowledge, what are 1 or 2, 3 practical steps that you would suggest that we could implement with the data that we already collect in Trinidad and Tobago to assist with citizen security?
Thank you. So when we think about data, and we're thinking about data collection, that's just one aspect of it. It's how do we analyze the data that we have? And the challenge is to analyze that data, you have got to bring a requisite level of knowledge beyond the data itself. So you collect data, but when you look at data, data could be anything at any time, any which way, and anyhow. But what are we doing with that data? I think what we've got to do is really understand what data-driven is, what evidence-based is, what intelligence-led is, what is precision policing, what is precision decision-making. How do we make informed decisions?
So how do we?
Apply that. Well, if I was to tell you that here, then there would be no use for me anywhere else, right? No. But this is what we need to do. I think we have an extraordinary amount of data. I think the individuals who are charged with the responsibility of understanding what that data is saying probably need some upskilling. They probably need some upskilling. Also, sometimes when you're accustomed looking at something for too long, you no longer see it. So oftentimes you may need a fresh set of eyes to look at your data.
Exactly. So is it that should we focus on upskilling people? And Commander Hira, I'm sure you want to jump in on this. Should we focus on upskilling people who may be doing certain aspects of policing or what have you very well, or do we want to introduce complementary skill sets that can enable them to do what they're doing well? Meaning, do we want to have data scientists
So
and...
we shouldn't want to have, we should already have that. So if you are running a professional police agency, you not only have police officers, but you have criminalists, you have criminal psychologists, you have criminologists, you have data scientists, you have the full complement to assist the officer or the officers in the work that they're doing. Because when someone is out there trying to deploy the techniques, someone has to be building the strategy. If you're using data, then you cannot be coming up with the same strategies all over. I always say what we need is knowledge, innovation, and imagination. And that is what we are doing in policing. Those are the things that we use. Sometimes we hear the word imagination and we think, well, you know, what is imagination? Imagination is what gave us data science. Imagination is what gave us artificial intelligence. Imagination is what can give us new strategies to reducing crime and criminality, to increasing the clearance rate, to enhancing public safety and public security, and to just building relationships of trust between communities and the police and society and the police, and just ensuring that the things that the police do are seen as legitimate and building public confidence.
Yeah.
Commander Hira, so how is AI being deployed already here or elsewhere?
Yeah, well, it is being deployed in Trinidad and Tobago and could be deployed more. But I wanted to backtrack a little bit, and it ties right back into Professor Cummings' statement. We should already be doing this, and are we doing it effectively? So if I was to ask the audience this afternoon, what makes you shiver? What really gets you scared? What makes you worried? You know, even from the highest of our dignitaries to the ordinary citizen. And people, I may just go through and speak of it quickly, is, okay, sometimes you go through social media and you see school violence, young women, young girls, or young children fighting savagely in the streets or in the classrooms. Or you may see the conditions of a homicide and a drive-by shooting. Or I have no water in my tap, or electricity is gone. Or that whole aspect of border security, when I look at it, or the gang warfare, the guns on the street. Those things make us shiver as citizens. And the thing about it is, how can we then, it should be happening already, apply our data, apply our aspects of policing to treat with some of those issues? And that is where it needs to start at a strategizing level of national security, where our experts are supposed to be recognizing these are some key issues on the canvas, and AI and artificial intelligence correlated with some of the other technologically driven aspects of policing and national security can be used to solve this and to move in a direction. We have to recognize that policing is not just blue flashing lights. We've gone past that. It's blue flashing lights with dash cams or with body cams or with information being received or air support or surveillance tied into a center that gives you that sort of information so you can make informed decisions, and surveillance and situational awareness. All of that comes in to technology. All of that comes into systems-driven integration. And I want to add one other thing as to where can we see this being applied in national security. And it comes as it affects, or I should say, stems from research that my team is presently doing. And we've created a framework which is called the active framework. So AI and technology and all of the aspects as Professor Cummings identified goes into the active framework. And what is the active framework? Automation of processes. We need to start moving faster. We need to see cases turning over. We need to see, as, for instance, I was hearing earlier about that issue at licensing office. Yes, you can produce all of your documents online, but you still have to work with the hard copies. Automation of processes. We need to have things rotating quickly so we can have results, and this goes also into the aspects of policing. The C, community engagement. And when we hear community engagement at the level of research and academics, it is not community, okay, I live Goodwood Park, or I live Santa Rosa, Rima, or I'm living in Malabar. That's not the community. Community is that sort of where you live, where you work, the organization, be it the banking sector, merchant sector, trade, policing. What is the community, and how can we engage our communities so we can work holistically, integrated to national security? And the T is targeted predictive policing. Professor Cummings spoke about this, not just predictive policing, but targeted policing. And with that target comes surgical strikes. We can use the technology to do surgical strikes and to be able to achieve our results. But it takes a mindset. It takes a will. Somebody has to say, hey, this is how we're going to do it. The I is intelligence and surveillance systems. And that is not information gathering. That is monitoring trends, creating an operational product from the intelligence and striking and doing certain things so that we can reduce this crime in country. We can bring back a semblance of comfort and security to our nation. The V is virtual threats. Virtual threats. We saw what happened with TSTT. We were told about information being leaked outside there, bank accounts, information where people may know about you now. So those cyber crimes and the extortion, that's an issue. That's a big one. Are we prepared as a police service, as a national security to treat with virtual threats? Can we form up covertly a sting operation and use the technology to bring results? And the E, enhanced forensics. Professor Cummings spoke about it. Forensics, not just tracking and being able to bring in results, but enhance our operations at forensics for weaponry and for, of course, the homicides that we are not seeing with that sort of utilizing the science of policing. So using the active framework provides avenues that the technology can be used with the willpower and, of course, with that sort of expertise and skill set that we need to see upskilled in country from a political will, and I say this unguardedly, a political will. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it, and set timelines and hold people accountable. That's my state.
So, Vitra, that's a lot too. So let me ask you. Let me ask you a related question. How do we create the framework to allow for innovation as well as proper regulation?
So, a couple of things right now, and Professor Cummins touched on it or communicated it earlier. There is no national data protection law right now in Trinidad and Tobago. There's no national data privacy law in the US, but there is a US framework, UK framework under the GDPR for data protection. So fundamental to artificial intelligence must be regulation. It is critically important, but it is also critically important that it is done well. So the combination and balancing innovation and regulation requires a couple of things. One, regulation frameworks and regulatory bodies to be established. And it must be a multidisciplinary approach.
Correct.
It just cannot be experts in police, for instance, or justice or security. It must involve law enforcement, it must involve government agencies, and it must involve invested parties, subject matter experts, as well as technology providers, number one. Number two, they must be able to have set parameters and criteria for how innovation or how artificial intelligence is going to be regulated, right? For instance, there must be principles in terms of how algorithms are developed, code is developed, how models are designed, that they are designed first with free from bias.
But wouldn't that stifle innovation? Because
no, but you must have a framework with these things, but they must govern fundamental principles of transparency, must balance fundamental principles of accountability, it must balance principles of privacy, and it must balance principles of explainability as well. So you have, correct.
So to what extent is that, to what extent is that the responsibility of a government to regulate while you're trying to create a culture of innovation versus the responsibility of the individual or the business? So for example, using a secure cloud in various, for example, Microsoft platforms, you can ensure that your data is locked within your company because it's located on servers that are dedicated to your company that you pay for, even if you are using the technology that enables ChatGPT, for example, the OpenAI technology.
So I will just say this, you have got to do innovation with ethics. There is no other way to do innovation without an ethical framework. You have got to ensure the ways in which you are doing data are ways in which uphold justice and due process. These are critical to the ways in which we're doing. Unfortunately, no data is protected. Unfortunately, privacy no longer exists. These things are not happening. You spoke about the GDPR. We have the EU AI Act, much discussion around that. because data and AI are so fundamental now to our existence and our development, but also fundamental to our human rights and civil rights and questions around democracy, you had the White House 3 weeks ago where the president deployed an executive order. This is how we need to look at AI and data in this country. But going back to something you said about data
Sorry,
in our society, go ahead.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Okay.
Maybe everybody else got it.
All right,
I
so an
didn't quite
executive
get it.
order is what the president signs. It is deploys. It's not legislation. But what it does, it creates a framework.
No, I understand the concept
Right.
of an executive order, but
is
what
in-
does it do?
Okay,
And what
so what
can
does
we
it do? So what it says
do
is this.
here?
We have got to do data and AI in ways that are responsible and trustworthy. The federal government has got to now take a risk management approach to the ways in which all data is being utilized and all AI is being built. We have got to look at questions around bias and discrimination and equity in every aspect of data and AI. We have got to think about the ways in which AI impacts democracy, the ways in which AI impacts just every level of the American society. The thing is this, while there are no set laws at the moment, and the world is looking to the EU AI Act, and the world is now looking to the Hiroshima Accord, and the world is now looking to countries like Canada, we have got to think as our country, what is our strategy? What is our approach? How are we engaging with data? How are we interacting with technology? What do we want Trinidad and Tobago to look like in 10 years? What is our vision for our country and our society when we think about data and AI and technology? Have we had those discussions? We have got to ensure that from our kindergarten level right up to our university level, that we are ensuring that our students understand questions around data ethics and data justice and data activism and innovation. Are they coding? Are they using data? Are they building systems? Do they understand models? One of the things that I do in the US, which breaks my heart, is that I travel across the US inspiring more diversity in technology and in STEM. And it really is, are we doing this at this level? Because if you want to build a data-conscious society, you have got to ensure that data is part of our lives. Data is now our DNA.
So if I understand you correctly, a vision, a framework that can be used to interpret the existing laws as we develop specific laws, and then more education from...
And more interaction and more engagement in the conversation around data.
Commander, here are closing thoughts?
Yeah. I would like to see us move in the direction of maximizing our usage of technology and start brainstorming at the national security level from a national perspective, the introduction of alert states in this country. The oil and gas sector is our bread basket. We know that. And if you go to the oil and gas sector, there are alert states, depending on what is taking place at the plants or on the platforms or in that sector. We should use that whole concept of thinking and apply an alert state through the technology to Trinidad. Be it rains, be it floods, be it a roadblock, be it police operations, national crisis. With a national alert state driven by the technology mindset of our citizens, we can react to situations differently in country, maximizing our state assets, and there will be less stress, there will be more management, and there will be the coordinated approach to safer and secured Trinidad and Tobago.
Petra?
Nira, just to pick up on my closing comments, it's something you said about regulation stifling innovation. And it's not that it's stifling innovation, it's stifling the possibility and the potential for artificial intelligence to be used by actors in bad ways. That is what it is intended to do. And a big part about artificial intelligence is the fundamental principle of risk identification as well. It is an underlying tenet of it. And anytime there is the development of artificial intelligence systems or use of artificial intelligence, there must be the ability to identify risk levels, unacceptable risk levels, prohibited, biometric, for instance, right? Facial recognition.
You know what my fear is, right? Once, based on how quickly we move in Trinidad and Tobago, once we give that risk assignment authority to these a
System.
faceless body,
The system.
then everything is high risk and nothing can happen.
No, but there must be obviously parameters established, right? Because you have to identify, and the EU Act.
Well, the
has
EU Act
actually-
certainly outlines what is high risk, and they've
Correct.
actually banned facial recognition.
Correct.
So they've banned certain things. So if you're doing business with the EU, remember the Brussels effect oftentimes kicks in, and the fact is many of the things that we may be thinking about developing have already been banned at a particular level. So that's something that you want to think about.
And there are also areas where there's free reign over innovation, things that are identified at limited risk or low risk. There's a code of conduct that people need to operate, just like in business, just like in life, in civil society.
Compliance, most
You
definitely.
must operate like that. But anything that is deemed high risk, critical infrastructure systems that protect or support our systems, right, our citizens, education, health, there must be some parameters where people are monitoring, ensuring that safety is built into the model, security is built, there's no bias, there's no injustice. So it must be at the forefront of it, and that cannot be resident in the hands of just simply one agency or one department. It has to be an
So the key
integrated
there is
multitude.
inclusivity, right? So you
Correct.
need civil society, you need business, of course, government.
Holistic, and
will
those are the
act.
guardrails that are needed.
Closing
I
thoughts,
think,
Professor Cummings?
finally, I would say that when we are thinking about technology, when we're thinking about data, when we're thinking about AI, we've got to ensure that the approach that we use is always one that situates the community, the citizen in the conversation. I also want you to just understand that we would not have this conversation now about data and AI without the concept of imagination. And imagination is the one thing that you can use in real time to redefine your society, to reposition yourself, to reimagine who you are. And I'll just give you this little, just to end it. A few years ago, I had this idea of using virtual reality in the criminal justice system. And I think when I thought about it, I said to myself that many people would think this was absolutely insane. And it's a concept that I've created and a concept that has now been really supported by some really big tech companies that's called immersive justice. And what it really does, it combines virtual reality, mixed reality, artificial intelligence to deploy that in the prison system as a way to rehabilitate, as a way to reconnect individuals with the outside world. The other thing I would say to you is this. Just believe that you have the power, and we're seeing lots of young people in here, to use technology in ways to redefine the trajectory of our society. Also understand there is no technology without humans. So technology cannot do anything without us. You've always got to have that human in the loop. And ethics is the most important approach to innovation because it includes justice and equity and diversity and inclusion. And if you are following what is going on internationally, I will say this to you. In January, I was invited by the CEO of OpenAI to have a conversation with him, 16 of us ethicists in the US.
Which CEO, the new one?
But
Is he back?
He's back. He's back with Sam Altman.
Oh, no.
And we had a fantastic conversation in January. And then by June, ChatGPT was the biggest thing in the US. And now Sam had left or was fired, and he is back. And why is all of this happening? It's happening around the question of ethics. And what are they saying now? They're saying that OpenAI needs to have an advisory board. And what are they also saying? They're saying maybe Renee Cummings is someone to sit on that board. So I just want you to know that you have the power to imagine. And I think as Trinidad and Tobago citizens, I think we have stopped dreaming and we have stopped imagining. And there is nothing more powerful than the power of the imagination. And I just want you to take that with you and use that to really build the society that we deserve.
And as Gandhi said, commerce without morality, yeah, shouldn't happen. So thank you very much. This has been a great panel. Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to the UN for having us.
Yes.